From 6th century Ireland and the palaces of the Sidhe to the strife-torn streets of modern Belfast, Broxon has put a new dimension on her use of fantasy, according to Anne McCaffrey. A glorious book, right not only in color, character, and action, but in anger and compassion, according to Paul Anderson. Magic, an irresistible blend of myth and reality that carries the reader from Celtic Ireland to the troubles of the 20th century, according to Joan D. Vinge. So, I want to talk about a remarkable development in our community theater. Our playhouse during the winter is the auditorium at the old high school. We call it the claustrophobe theater, not so much because it is small or cramped, but because we like to think we're clever, and the name has a nice ring to it. The high school is quite old, dating back to the 50s, and mostly unused now since the new high school was built, although we continue to use some of the classrooms toward the front of the building for community services and the auditorium, of course. I mentioned in a previous video how one of our community theater actors, Genevieve Darlington, raised hell at the last outdoor amphitheater performance of the year. Literally, she seemed to have summoned a great flying horde of demons or bats out of hell, which we heard but did not see as the sky darkened. Genevieve Darlington is actually the stage name of Betty Tepp, who waits tables at a local steakhouse. Betty is a quiet lass, dark-haired, while Genevieve is larger than life, usually red-haired or blonde. You might say that Betty must play Genevieve to play anything at all. As she takes on the bold theatricality of Genevieve, she is transformed to fill and overspill any role that comes her way. We thought that Betty managed to banish the demons that Genevieve accidentally summoned at the last of the autumn series, but it turns out that at least one got lost on its way back to hell, or wherever it came from. It also turns out that this thing has been hanging about Betty's workplace, a lump of unusually thick shadow under the eaves of the building. It could find no adequate place to hide from the sun's cold winter light, and so it was slowly burning away, too weak to menace, too exhausted at night to do anything but cower. However, this thing followed Betty to the old high school as she started traveling there nightly for rehearsals. Inside, it found darkness and shadows aplenty as it explored the abandoned hallways and classrooms toward the back of the building. There, its blistered wings healed. It fed on insects and small mammals. It grew stronger. It started to grow bolder as it got over the initial shock of its burning isolation in our world. It started to explore its new home more, including the rooms toward the front of the building, the ones that are still used, like the daycare center. Nobody knew it because the toddlers and infants at the center could not explain themselves except through their screams and tears, but an epidemic of nightmares had begun. The thing was always at the edge of their vision. It moved their toys from a distance, from the closets and cabinets where it curled itself during the days, and it fed on their fear, which was much more delicious than moths. Luckily, it was still too afraid of the light to come out during the day. Also lucky, the thing became distracted from this focus when crowds started arriving at night for the series of winter plays. At first, it merely observed the comings and goings. It was still too weak during the performances of Grease, our first play of the season, to do anything but watch. Experimentally, though, it tasted the audience's reactions. The flavors were different from anything it had ever tasted before. The next play was Lady Macbeth, an adaptation and retelling by a local playwright. Genevieve played the re-envisioned lady heroically. Upon the final showing, she was showered with flowers. Watching from the shadows, the thing was intrigued. During the next show, Peter Pan, odd effects began to appear. Genevieve as Wendy flew higher and more dangerously than the little set could ever have accommodated. Darlington, although alarmed, sang more charmingly than ever. She fully understood that something was amiss, but she had promised herself if she ever was to die, it would be on the stage and people would speak of it for ages. For the adaptation of Totoro, based on the Studio Ghibli animated film, actual dust sprites appeared and floated over the audience. There were gasps of amazement. From the darkness, the thing was, of course, responsible for these special effects. It fed avidly on the wonder of the audience, which cost them nothing, but the thing had never felt so full, so deliciously replete. It had found new meaning. Of course, there was no way these interventions could have gone unnoticed, unremarked, or uninvestigated. To make a long story short, the thing was discovered, communication was established, an agreement was struck. For the next play, the one from which I have most recently returned, the thing joined the production team as a source of wonder and magical effects. The thing even appeared on the stage, albeit briefly, as an unnamed interlocutor who holds back Philoctetes from killing Paris in our modern updating of Philoctetes at Troy. We gasped at the appearance of the thing, but it performed its role admirably, and we stood to applaud it when it was called out at the end of the curtain call. It blinked in the oppressive glare of the spotlights, which must have felt like heat lamps to it, but we could see it was happy. It was grinning so widely. I'm a little bit worried, though. As we stood to applaud the thing, I could see a look flash across Darlington's face. I don't want to call it envy, but it looked like envy. I certainly hope we have not unleashed a monster on our world.